In this character protection overlay, this originally came from a set of 3 sector plans: volcano cliffs, volcano heights, and volcano trails. So these 3 sector plans were essentially combined into one area, which is the red outline in this map. And there's a few sub areas within this. There's also the Northwest Mesa Escarpment Plan that applies over much of this area as well. So the first change is a change proposed to building height. And so what this would do is this would apply to cluster development, and it would allow building height to be increased to 26 feet for a maximum of 75% of the building footprint. And so that change comes from the Volcano Cliff Sector Plan, and that allowed cluster development to have 26 feet for a maximum of 75% of the building footprint. And so for all other low density development that is not a cluster development, building height could only be 2 stories or 26 feet for 50% of the building. So the one consequence of this change is expanding the rule that formerly applied to the volcano cliffs area to also apply in the volcano trails and the volcano heights. And I know that this was probably the most concerning of changes. So I'm going to see if I can open it up to questions just after this first round.
Okay, and could I suggest maybe that if people have questions, there's probably the raise hand signal that they can do in the participant list, or you can enter them in chat. That's probably the easiest way to show that you have a question or want to ask something about this. So we'll give it a minute to see if anyone is indicating that they have any questions. And if not, we can also come back to this later, I'm sure, after Carrie goes through the other information.
Absolutely. So I'm not seeing anything yet, so I will just go on to the next change. So this next one is a little bit more of a clarification of
Carrie,
a rule.
You
Yes.
got a couple questions that came into the chat.
Can I help by reading them out, Carrie, so everybody hears them? So someone asked, is this guaranteed? And someone said volcano cliffs said 50%, which it should stay. Okay.
So the first one, is this guaranteed? I'm going to take that one on. That's a good question. So this is not guaranteed. This is a proposal for a change. And this was something, a change that was requested. And it's something that's kind of, the planning department takes any request for changes and puts them on a list for discussion. And so this doesn't mean that we're proponents of this change. It means that we're responding to public comments. And so through this venue and through the review and approval process, we will be taking comments and listening to concerns and questions people have. And it's something that we're raising for discussion, but it's not guaranteed. It's going through those 3 steps of approval: the Environmental Planning Commission, Land Use Planning and Zoning Subcommittee, and City Council. So this is not at all a done deal.
And Carrie, there are about 3 different people who then asked who requested the change, any information about the rationale, and what people should do if they oppose this suggestion.
Oh, those are great. Thank you, Jesse, for reading them. That's really helpful to me. So it looks like we received a comment from Pulte, and so that kind of elevated it to our attention. And we did the research into the Volcano Cliff Sector Plan, and this is a screenshot of that. And so it is a rule that was adopted by City Council on November 2014. And we'll be sharing these slides with you afterwards so that you can, I put in a link to the sector plan so you can kind of go and check that we're not joking about this, but it is a change that applies to a portion of this area. and it's on page 74. So the reason that we kind of accepted this request was that it was a rule on the books, and it was something that City Council on through a public process was decided it was an okay rule. But part of the limitations of this is that a cluster development needs to be a minimum of 1 acre. And so an example in the RA zone with the lot sizes, you could build 4 houses. And so a cluster development, instead of dividing them into 4 equally sized rectangles and putting a big house in the middle, what cluster development requires is preserving 30% of that land area as common open space. So you can do the same number of houses, but they're just basically shifted to one side. And so as far as I understand, the rationale of adopting this rule in the first place was to provide more kind of like view corridors across the mesa top. And so that's why this rule was adopted in the first place. And that's why it was requested for us to reconsider that rule. Because when we did adopt the IDO, a lot of the nuance of the sector plans got shook out a little bit.
If you don't mind me asking,
the other.
And can I just say also that I'm noting that there are a number of people commenting opposition or saying that they have already argued this issue. And so the comment that these comments about opposition will be noted, are being recorded, will be conveyed in the summary report that we're preparing as facilitators. And I would suggest not getting into the argument about opposition right now, but the opposition is thoroughly noted and will be conveyed as part of this meeting process.
Can I ask a question if you don't mind?
Sure.
Okay, so I want to ask a question. So Pulte came into our neighborhood, bought 20 lots. In the same exact time, they knew exactly what the laws were, you know, and the requirements were. And
is this the project up here in Volcano Trails? I'm familiar with this case.
No, in Volcano Cliffs.
Oh, okay.
So most of the people in Volcano Cliffs paid a premium for their homes. It's custom homes. And then now Pulte wanted to come and build. They requested a change. We already won it twice. So this builder can go into the city and ask for the whole entire lot to be changed in order to build in our neighborhood. So no matter what we do, we can't oppose it. So I want to ask just a simple, another question is, so if we go to their neighborhood that they're building and we buy lots across the street and build something, is it okay? I mean, like, it's kind of pretty silly. If you already know that the laws are stated in the neighborhood, and then you come and you request for a change, and then you lose twice, then you go to the city and request the whole entire law to be changed to build homes, that's just not fair. So, I mean, I don't understand. So is it because they're a huge builder? Or is it because they're tied into the city? I mean, what do we need to do to prove our point? Because most people that live in this neighborhood, they built their dream homes. And then, so Pulte builds in so many different locations. They didn't have to come and buy these 20 lots in the neighborhood. It wasn't like they needed to, or they purchased them before the neighborhood got started. They came in.
Okay, I hear you. Can I respond? Because I'm getting the gist of your comment, and I'd like to direct you to what you would do is this is under consideration right now. And so you know, like you could even come up with a counter proposal to say maybe there shouldn't be any height allowed over one story. So or you can just submit a letter saying this change is not good, it's not going to help us, please don't adopt it. And so the first step would be to submit written comments to the EPC.
I mean, like,
and then the second,
in a lot of other states.
Excuse me, sir, I want to make sure that Carrie has a chance to respond to you. I'd also like to make sure that we do have a chance to get on to everything that's next.
Yeah.
So I would ask you to please be as concise as possible on this issue, because we will have more to discuss today. The opposition is thoroughly heard,
Mhm.
and I believe that Carrie was also explaining how you can also express your opposition in other ways other than at this meeting.
Yes, so that would be writing letters to us. You could leave your email address or phone number in a chat, and we can do a follow-up meeting to discuss this with you. And there's also the public hearings that you could come and speak at. Okay.
Okay.
So I will go on to the next change. It seems like we've kind of addressed the bulk of the questions. Is that right, Jesse?
There's one more that I want to read off. I'm not sure that I'm not sure if it's directly related to this, but it's regarding metrics to support the newly established purpose of the IDO, protecting communities.
I don't quite understand that. I'm going to ask Michaela if you understand. Could maybe just read the question again?
The question is, can anyone speak to metrics that are being drafted to support the newly established purpose of the IDO, quote, protecting communities? And then there was an additional comment from this person. I'd hope they are being drafted regarding things being done in secret and people not getting information. But metrics would address the protection of communities that are needed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the city did recently, when we updated our comprehensive plan, adopted numerous metrics about educational attainment, poverty level, a lot of kind of census information and other development and quality of life stuff that helps us track where we're going as a city. And so that is something that as the city begins the community planning area assessments next year, we will start evaluating some of that data. We're actually working on it right now and working on some websites so that you can actually pull up the information for your area, even in advance of when your community planning area assessment starts. So we do have metrics, and we'll be looking at that, and those are adopted by City Council to track whether we're moving towards the vision of the comprehensive plan. And so that's something that we'll be looking at, but it's kind of a longer timeline than this IDO adoption process.
Can I jump in just for a second, Carrie?
Mhm.
I'm wondering whether this is also, the question is tied to the actual decision criteria for whether to change any small area rule in the integrated development ordinance. And again, I'll just point people to the review and decision criteria in the integrated development ordinance for this decision type has specific criteria that decision makers are going to be weighing in terms of whether it's a good change to make or not.
Mhm.
And the staff report is the place where those things are discussed, and then at the hearing, of course, comments come into play in terms of how well the change is justified or not.
Carrie, there are a few more questions coming in. I don't know if you want to take these questions or if you want to address a few more things and then come back to some questions. Let me know.
Why don't we move forward to make sure that we get through everything, and we can circle back to this one.
And everyone, I'm making notes of your questions right here, so I remember to make sure that they are asked.
And then the other quick one that I can just respond to is that when we submit the application at the end of next week, we'll be putting online all of the proposed changes. And so a lot of them are kind of mocked up in this presentation. So you'll be able to see what actually gets submitted to the Planning Commission, and then that'll get revised and changed through the whole review and approval process. Okay, so this is the next set of changes for Volcano Mesa, CPO 13. The first one is about residential garage access. Right here, I've copied the current text right now. It says that residential garages on corner lots shall be accessed from a side street or an alley. So we know what a side street is, or an alley is, but it wasn't really clear what the side street is. And so what we're proposing to change the language to say is from the side of the lot or the rear lot line or the alley. And so in other words, if you're on a corner lot, don't put your driveway access from the front of the lot where the residential, all the houses are facing each other. So we feel like this is kind of a pretty minor change that's just clarifying what the original intent from the sector plan said, which was from a side street. The second change, this one is to a rule to add a little more clarification also, where 3 car garages are allowed. The third car is required to be stepped back a minimum of 2 feet from the other 2 so that there's more variety in the front facade. And so the proposed change is that this would only apply if the garage is facing the front street where the building, the dwelling is also facing. So if it were one that was accessed off an alley, you could put all 3 garage doors in a line and it wouldn't require the variation. Also, the other situation is if you did access your lot from a side street, that stepping back wouldn't be required because that's not the main front street of the neighborhood. Did we have any questions about any of these?
Carrie, while I wait to see if any questions come in specifically about that, Mike Voorhees said that he has a question about the characterization of these changes in the agenda that he would like to ask. I don't know if you would like to take that question.
Sure. Are you able to unmute yourself or let me?
I am unmuted, I believe.
Okay, yeah, please go ahead.
So in the agenda that we were reading about this, it had stated, which is consistent with the Volcano Cliffs sector plan, characterizing the change to the 75%. I've looked it over carefully and it's not consistent with the sector development plan that was there. It always had 50% as a limit. Again, this relates back to Pulte coming in 2 different neighborhoods, each time trying to up it to 75% so that they could build their standard homes that they already have designed, their tract homes that they want to put in. They lost both of those battles. And apparently they've got a back channel into the planning department where they've been saying, change it so we can just come in and overturn the hearings that we lost. What I want to know is who wrote the language that said, which is consistent with the Volcano Cliffs sector plan when it clearly isn't. That characterization, if I were just looking at this agenda casually, I'd say, oh, okay, they just want to make some of these rules more consistent with the plans that were already in place. But in fact, this changes the character from the sector development plans from an extensive multi-party, multi-interested entities who developed this, not wanting to have blocky, top-heavy, view blocking developments. And Pulte doesn't care about that. And so how did that get into the language characterizing this separate from the fact that how is Pulte being able to suggest these changes that are opposed by the residents who, as Rinchin mentioned earlier, have paid $50,000 per lot for special assessment districts precisely to protect against that kind of building?
Okay, thank you, Mike. I want to give Carrie a chance to respond, and then we've touched on this a little bit already. Go ahead, Carrie.
Sorry, I'm here. I just needed to come into another room to plug my computer in before my batteries die. Oh, okay, got that. So just in the nick of time, I think. What I pulled up was this is the Volcano Cliffs sector plan. So it was originally adopted, but it was amended in November 2014. And so this is where that language comes from, that says that if you do a private commons development or a cluster development, the height can be increased to 26 feet for a maximum of 75% of the building footprint. And so when they pointed this to our attention, we looked in the sector plan. So this is posted online, and there's a link in the presentation. We saw this, and planning staff wrote that comment that you were asking about. I'll go back to the presentation about reinstating a provision from the Volcano Cliff sector plan.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. And again, on this topic of who is responsible, how can we oppose this? General opposition to Pulte, your comments are being captured here. They will be conveyed as part of this report. The meeting is being recorded, and there are a number of chances after this to express concerns before this is approved. And so that comment is very well heard. Carrie, can I ask one more question that is related to the heights, and then hopefully move us on? Would there be a separate height stipulation when the development would be near MPOS / Petroglyph National Monument?
Absolutely. And that is kind of in the next little step of this presentation. And I just wanted to respond to Mike and everyone else who is in opposition to this. This is why we're having the neighborhood meeting, to see what the public perception is. And so there's council staff on this call, and we're listening. And so this isn't just to ram something down your throat. We're just trying to be responsive to all the stakeholders. So thank you for participating. Thank you for expressing your interest, and we're here to listen, and we'd like to continue this conversation. So thank you.
Carrie, can I, sorry, I can't find the raise hand button.
Okay.
So I hate to interrupt.
No, please.
Could you clarify for me, when this was in the Volcano Cliffs plan, was it only in the residential, rural residential zone, or is it also in the large lot?
It is in this rural residential. And I'm sorry, I'm not really familiar with the.
So the large lot zone will be, if you scroll up, it's the next one in intensity.
Okay, so the
large lot. There we go. Sorry.
So I am not seeing that change.
So I think the point that Mr. Voorhees and his neighbors are concerned about is when this was in the Volcano Cliffs plan, it applied to the area to the west of the north. I think it's the North Geologic Window. It's kind of out beyond Montecito, Monticello. I always get those two confused. Monte something. And that's an area where there are large pieces of land where you can do a cluster development. And so one thing we might want to think about, and I don't know if we have the ability to do this before the submittal, is to think about where this would apply rather than all of Volcano Mesa, whether it might apply, for example, in the trails area where there are some larger lots that could be developed with a cluster development form, rather than in the parts of Volcano Cliffs where we have the lots are already platted out, and they're, for the most part, all under individual ownership. And so the areas that were formerly the large lot zoning, where where this wouldn't have applied under the previous sector plan. So it might be something for us to look at, creating a little bit more nuance into this amendment to make it match a little bit more closely to what was originally in the Cliffs plan. So sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, thank you for that background knowledge on the sector plans, Petra. It does sound like this needs a lot more work. So with that, we've heard you, and we're happy to have continued conversations, and my email's at the end of the presentation. So feel free to reach out, and I'm not trying to cut anyone off, but I'm gonna move forward to the next change. So this is the last one from the Volcano Mesa CPO 13. And this also comes from the Volcano Cliff sector plans, which prohibited electronic display signs. And so that was another thing that got missed when we adopted the IDO, and that was a protection that this area had. So we're proposing to add that to the list of areas where electronic signs are prohibited. Do we have any questions on that or chat? I'm guessing everyone supports that, so I'll keep scrolling.
If anything pops up, I'll let you know, Carrie.
Thank you. Okay, so the next one, Northwest Mesa, just because this is related to the building heights questions that also came up. So the Northwest Mesa occupies kind of a similar territory to the Volcano Mesa CPO, but this view protection overlay area is much larger, and it goes kind of all the way around the Petroglyph National Monument. This was like one of our original planning documents to protect that area, because it is so special, and we recognize that. So what this changes is basically, I'm going to jump over to this map that we have. This kind of reddish brick red boundary is the whole Northwest Mesa escarpment area. And then the green one in here, this is the current height protection overlay. And then what the proposal is, so currently within this green boundary, which is like not too far off of where the Petroglyph National Monument is, the heights are limited to 18 feet. And what this proposes is the edge of this kind of purplish boundary is 660 feet away from that. So this would kind of encompass this whole area right in here, 660 feet, which is kind of 2 downtown blocks, and have a second height protection overlay area. And what that would look like is the first one's limited to 18 feet, but within that kind of next buffer area, which would be called sub area 2, structure height would be limited to 30 feet or whatever your underlying zone allows. So if it's like an R1 residential zone district, the height's already capped at 26 feet. This doesn't mean that you could go taller, but if you were allowed taller building heights, like in the commercial properties, within that area, it's limited to 30 feet. The second big change, I'm going to jump over here. This is pretty substantial. This is changing uses. And so what this does is for both of those two sub areas within the view protection overlay, there's certain limitations about these auto-oriented and kind of more industrial uses have restrictions if you're within 330 feet of major public open space. And so what happens is either some of them are prohibited, but some of them may be allowed through a conditional use process, which is a public hearing where there's notice and some discussion over whether that use is appropriate at the location. So this is just a list of the uses. And so it's basically kind of extending that protection that kicks in next to major public open space to also apply to, again, that buffer area that's also including this first height protection and then the second height protection. So those would kick in for all of this area. And so that's kind of starting to get over into where the Volcano Heights Urban Center is.